Hi everybody, welcome to Thursday morning's edition of Indycar. I'm Gordon Ross. Today it seems that the Brexit, what would you call it, saga, I guess, is dragging on even further than we thought. The European Union has decided that they're not going to make a decision on the deal until much later. They're not even going to bother discussing it at the next EU 27 summit in November. So basically the politicians, the negotiators, the leaders of the EU, everybody has kicked the ball further down the road, basically, hoping that the UK would do something. It's been widely reported that Mrs May was deliberately trying to go over the top of Michel Barnier, in other words, to get around him so that she didn't have to negotiate with him, by going directly to this meeting of the EU 27 with the express idea of negotiating directly with the 27 leaders rather than their representative Michel Barnier, who she's having absolutely no luck in forcing to do her bidding. The interesting thing about this is that either the British government and Mrs May still think that they're in a negotiation. It's a total delusion. There is no negotiation left. They've had 2 years of negotiations. And this is a British choice now as to whether they go ahead with Brexit on the terms that have been agreed so far or not. But it's not down to the European Union to build a wall across Ireland, which is obviously what the British government is hoping that they will force the Europeans to do. This game of brinkmanship has only got one destination at the moment, and that will be a hard no-deal Brexit, where the European Union will be forced to put in some kind of border controls across the island of Ireland to ensure that there is security at their western frontier, but also so that there is order and not chaos at the border of Northern Ireland and the Republic of Ireland. Now, how this will all pan out is anybody's guess, but it's beginning to look more and more likely that the UK's intended outcome was always going to be the same, that they knew they couldn't square the circle with Ireland right at the beginning, and they spent 2 years working out a series of events, probably by gaming it, role-playing it, to the point where the least worst scenario for the British government and for the Tory party itself would be for us to crash out of the European Union completely, damaging the country badly, especially damaging Scotland very badly in the process, and causing the restart of the troubles in Northern Ireland, but then being able to conveniently blame the restart of the troubles in Northern Ireland on the European Union being forced by the lack of any kind of backstop from the UK into putting in some kind of border controls. It's a nasty high-stakes game that the British are playing with the European Union, and I guess the European Union leaders know it now, and it's beginning to become apparent to them that the British have no intentions of putting in place any kind of backstop that the EU can agree to. So what will happen, we don't know, but the point is that whatever happens is going to be bad, and the one certainty that there is in all of this is that whatever the outcome is from the Brexit process, that it's going to be very bad for Northern Ireland and the South. So basically you're talking about the whole island of Ireland is going to suffer because the Tories want to blame their Brexit, which they started, on the Europeans, and damage Ireland in the process. They really do not care. That they are that callous that they will throw the whole island of Ireland under the bus so that the Tory party can stay in power, and so that the establishment gets what it wants, which is for England and Wales to become a massive tax haven and the 51st state of the United States. It's interesting, talking of the United States and our relationship with them. You remember that we built an aircraft carrier or two. In fact, one of them is off America at the moment undergoing trials where they're trying to land these F-35 jets on the deck. And they've discovered that the jets have several big problems. In fact, in America, the entire F-35 fleet has been completely grounded due to a fatal accident involving a crash of an F-35 a month ago. This is not being reported in the press, in the UK press at all. The other thing is that these F-35 jets, because of the way they're designed, cannot lift very much payload. If they're to vertically land on the deck of the new Queen Elizabeth carrier, they have to drop a lot of their weapons first because they'd be too heavy to land vertically. And the British pilots are having to invent a new way of landing these planes called, I'm not sure exactly what the term is, but they come in from astern of the ship with quite a lot of forward speed, but with the hovering facility turned on. In other words, the lift fans are on, so the jet is in hover mode, but it's moving forwards. And this is apparently the only way they can land the plane with a full weapons load on the deck, because it's so badly designed that it would have to drop about 25% of its bomb load in order to land vertically on the deck of a carrier, which doesn't have any arresting gear. There is no way of stopping a jet which is flying forwards onto the deck of this aircraft carrier from simply flying off the end of it again instead of stopping. So a lot of weird things happening with the new jets, and the fact that because they're not perfect and because they can't carry a full bomb load when they're landing vertically, has made the whole issue of this aircraft carrier extremely questionable. The safety of the pilots and the safety of the crew on deck now being compromised by the choice of plane. Okay, moving back again towards Brexit and the UK and Scotland. One of the interesting things from my recent posts about the new constitution that's being prepared, and something which nobody actually knows about yet, unless they've read the final parts of the constitution, is that when it comes to voting to become independent, it will not be the British Electoral Commission which will do that. Because under this new constitution, a new electoral body will form, and it is that electoral body that will call the independence vote. And it will be voted on in Scotland using a Scottish system of voting, which will be designed by that new electoral body. Once that election has been called, whatever the system is, if we use a conventional voting system, then the counting must happen inside the polling stations. That's one of the conditions of this new electoral system, that the vote is counted in situ, that no ballot boxes ever leave the site of the election officials from either side, so that everybody can be sure that the vote is counted in full view of the public and nothing untoward can happen. The voting system can be designed by this body. But what's interesting about this is it takes the whole issue of referendums and polling and elections away from government completely in Scotland and into the arena of this new body, which is entire purpose is to ensure complete transparency and complete fairness at all times. So in other words, there won't be postal votes going off to England. There won't be private companies with Tories on their directors, board of directors. There won't be any of that involved in the counting of votes. And in fact, it may well be that local authorities will not be involved in the counting of votes or the keeping of the electoral registers anymore. Remember that many local authorities are run by UK parties or majorities of UK parties officials, and therefore they have a heavy bias and a heavy interest in ensuring that a British electoral system is used. That can be swept away as well by this system. So built into this constitution is the complete impartiality and the complete independence from the British electoral system that everybody has been wanting to see for so long. So it wouldn't actually be so much the Scottish Government calling for this vote to happen, it would be this body calling for it to happen. And this body would run it as well. It would not be run by the Scottish Government, although they could call for it to happen. They could say, now is the time we want to do it, and then that body takes over everything and runs the entire process. Now what's interesting about this is that as soon as that body has been convened and starts running the process, the actual process of becoming independent has already started, because assuming that you get the yes vote as the result of that vote, then the entire process starts in earnest, and that means the implementation of the various articles begins as soon as the yes vote is achieved, because the good thing about the Constitution is that it starts with the vote. It doesn't start after the vote, it starts with it. So it's a process that runs all the way through, and it's conditional. So if you've all voted yes and there's a majority of, say, 55% for independence, then as soon as that vote has been officially declared by the returning officer, then all of the institutions of Scotland start to get set up immediately. And at that point, the Constitution begins to get set in place, because those are the things that you have just voted for. In other words, when you voted yes, you voted for the Constitution to be set rolling, and it can't be stopped once it's set rolling. It starts on a 1.5 year journey to full independence that cannot be reversed after the yes vote. So it's a very elegant method that Dr. McNaught has created for the whole system to work seamlessly without the Scottish Government having to really organise the timetabling itself. It will already have been organised inside the constitutional documents. And there is a series of actions which are in the Constitution which run their course over 1.5 years to set up the new country. And once they start rolling, the yes vote is the trigger for that, by the way. Once the yes vote's been announced, the trigger is fired, and the process starts to unfold in a particular sequence. And that sequence is set, and that is what you voted for. You voted for that sequence to begin. The Scottish Government doesn't need to declare independence immediately. The point is that the process of becoming independent starts to happen. And at the end of the 18 months, you are independent and you can declare it. And this is a unilateral system because it repeals the Acts of Union in Scottish law, which incidentally is perfectly legitimate and legal, because it is supposed to be a voluntary union which was entered into freely by the Scottish Government in 1707. An Act of the Scottish Parliament can repeal it, and that's exactly what this document does. So there's hope ahead, despite the gloomy outlook that there seems to be at the moment, and the potential dangers of this highly callous and completely reckless disregard that the British government has for Ireland and Scotland and Wales. In fact, anybody who's not a Brexiter can basically just go to hell because the Brexiters want to get their own way. But there is this answer, there is this solution now to the problem, and it is this constitution. And this constitution which has a built-in mechanism which sets itself up. As soon as you vote yes, the constitution builds the state. It basically starts telling government what it must do at these various stages, and the government must do that because the people have voted for it. So once you say yes, that you want to be a sovereign people, then your sovereignty is immediately enacted, and the government that's in place at the time, which would be the SNP, has to follow that process all the way through 1.5 years later to the point of full independence. It's an amazing document, and I recommend that you read it. I've posted it online. Read it carefully, particularly the last few parts which deal with the transition from the yes vote all the way through to declaring independence, having all of the departments of state in place, and have everything in place, including the law, people's rights, the currency, the banks, the welfare institutes. All of these things will be put instantly into place. So that's it for today. What else can I say? That the Tories are still either deluding themselves that they are in some kind of negotiation, when in actual fact the EU has told them there can be no more negotiating. They've come to the end of the road. Mrs May made a desperate attempt to try and outflank Michel Barnier by going around him and trying to talk to his bosses, as it were. But the EU has very carefully re-emphasised their complete commitment and confidence in Michel Barnier as their representative in these negotiations. So Mrs May has lost, basically. She has no more negotiating room. There aren't any more wriggles to be done. There's no more negotiating to happen. The EU has basically just said we cannot do anything until the British state decides what it wants to do, and that they're just going to sit there and wait and call the British bluff. What else can they do? They're trying to negotiate in good faith, and the British are not. The British are not negotiating. They are, I believe, just dragging their heels until the European Union is forced to do something about the Irish border themselves. And then they will try to blame the Europeans for any mess that ensues in Northern Ireland. It's a shocking, nasty, cowardly and callous way to do anything, frankly, and I'm appalled that this British government, which purports to represent Scotland, would do anything as horrible as that to Ireland. Anyway, as I said, there's hope for us in Scotland at the moment. I just hope that we can escape this dreadful outcome by enacting our new constitution. We desperately need to get out. I think the clock has run out, really. I think by Christmas, if we haven't heard from the SNP that there's going to be a vote by Christmas, then we'll have left it too late, because I strongly suspect that we will fall out of the EU or be kicked out of the EU, and the British state will try to blame Europe for the chaos and for any violence that happens in Ireland. So, an unpleasant prospect, but there is hope for Scotland at least, and I believe that the template that Mark has created for this this constitution can be used in other places, in Northern Ireland, in Wales as well, as a template for any small country to become independent, and could be used by either of those two states as well, if they feel that the situation is bad enough to warrant them putting that to their people. Anyway, I have to go. Sorry, it sounds a bit depressing today, but it's not my creation. I think that the Tories are doing this. It's sad, and as I say, it's callous, and it's unnecessary, but it's typical Tory behaviour. It's basically screw up the whole country and blame somebody else for it by using your tame media to do the work for you. They already used the tame media to set up Nigel Farage to tee up the whole Brexit fiasco. They've been doing that for the past decade. This is not an accident. Brexit is not happening by accident. The British are not the bumbling fools that they make themselves out to be. This is deliberate, and this is, I believe, a deliberate action that's being taken to crash out of Europe, become part of America, and to blame all of the chaos and the confusion and the losses and the violence and the damage to people's lives on Europe. That's what they're up to. Nothing else really explains their actions other than that. Anyway, I've got to go. I'll see you all later. Bye for now.